Got here a custom clean by SL Amps. I'll try not to think of it as slamps. Too late. I don't know anything about this company. I don't know anything about this amp other than it is making some capital D promises with the cosmetics. The symptom says blows fuses and smokes, and that's a nasty habit. Let's see what we can do. All right, I'm going to take a wild guess that he's just using a 4-ohm cab. He's got on half power. That switch feels very loose. That's not a good switch. The bat itself is physically loose inside the bushing compared to these, where it's got a little bit of wiggle, but this one's just really wiggly. But high quality switches tend to be inexpensive. We're going to start here. It says 115 VAC, and it's scratched into the powder coat, and then 4 amp. 4 amp fuse for the mains. It says hand built in Hungary. Okay, well there goes the fuse. Just fell right out. I'm thinking this must have been the spare fuse because there is no mains fuse in there. And this is a 6 amp fuse. So we do not want a 6 amp fuse in this amp rated for 4 amps, according to the scratches in the powder coat at least. And I don't know what's in this amp yet. Let's assume that it's somewhat similar to a twin in a grand scheme of things since. So 4 amps seems reasonable. Let me find a 4 amp fuse. Those are my 5 amp fuses. That means those are my 6. All right. When we power this on, I'll be using my current limiter so we don't just keep feeding it fuses. Here's a 4 amp slow blow. Let me put this in. It's a very cheap fuse drawer. Has no pressure holding the fuse in place. So I will talk to the owner and see if he would like a new jack, power receptacle with a new fuse drawer, because the way this works in here, you have to have the fuse upside down to install it, and the fuse wants to fall out. So the question is it blowing fuses, or is the mains fuse just not making contact? We will find out. But if he was getting, it says blue fuses, then smoked. Maybe it was blowing the 4 amp fuse, he put in the 6 amp fuse, and then we got smoke. That's very possible. Let me take the chassis out of the cabinet and see what we're up against here. Okay, I put a bit of tape here where the owner's name is. I don't want to broadcast his name all over YouTube. It's not what he signed up for. The amp must be earthed. It's easy to make fun of things like that, but their English is much better than my Hungarian, and I will judge this based on whether they did the things which are universal right. So, good tight fit there. I want to give them props for two things. First of all, they have metal inserts here. So the screws that hold the rear panel in place are machine screws, not wood screws. And they've got a little washer behind the dress washer. I guess you can't see it. They have a little washer behind that dress washer that keeps the dress washer from cutting into the Tolex too much. That's a nice little touch. It means that no matter how many times this rear panel is removed to change tubes or whatever, the wood doesn't get all gouged up because it's in a metal insert. All right, got some 2 amp Dr. 6L6 GC STRs. These are often very, very good tubes. It's got a 12X, EL84 there. It's got a bunch of standard tubes. It's got this big JJ multi-section can cap. I've had a lot of failures with these. I don't use them in my own, but I will reserve judgment until I get inside. Let me disconnect the reverb. And there's something going up to the front. It feels like, no, that's just reverb cables. So I was making sure I didn't have some illumination built inside the chassis. All right, let me take the chassis out of the cab now. Okay, as soon as I got the chassis loose, I got a whiff of something burned inside. I can't get the chassis out yet. Because these corner protectors are in the way. And even they have good quality stainless steel screws, so kudos for that. The bolts that hold the chassis to the cabinet are also very heavy duty, thick stainless steel. Oh, they look like 10 by 24, 10 by 32s. They might be a metric equivalent like an M6. But they are heavy duty, and they also have the double washers like I mentioned. All right, we're going to start with the good, and we're going to work our way to the ugly. So these are very nice boards, laid out very intelligently. You can see he's got the outer foil end of the caps measured and indicated. This is all very Dumble familiar stuff, which it should be given the cosmetics. And the majority of it is just fine. Very, very good even. I will say that you see some darkening right here. This resistor has had too much of a load on it, too much current being drawn. Imagine here. It could be the cap. It could be something connected to the cap. But the main issue, the smelly issue, is over here. This capacitor lost its lunch. It spewed all its contents over here. And it's because it got hot. I'm going to cut it away to see if there are burnt diodes or something beneath it, because I can't see with that cap in place. Okay, this started off life as a F&T 22 microfarad 500 volt cap. It burned and exploded, all the guts left. I don't think because the cap itself failed, but because this resistor here, right beneath it, burned, baby, burned. And once that cap's rated for 85-degree use, it was a lot more than 85 degrees here. Now, this is the string of diodes used for the rectification for the B+. I am thinking that this is the bias supply, and this was a filter cap in the bias supply. So the 500 volts was crazy overvalued. They just needed 22 microfarad there for whatever the bias would be. I'll figure all that out, and I could be wrong about that. I almost have to be wrong about that, don't I? I can't. Well, it depends. It looks like the positive end was here, and if this were biased, that positive end should have been here. Oh no, the band on the diode is not. I'm thinking this is a separate cap from the. This is the first dropping resistor from the bias supply, which would have been some wire in here. Maybe this wire is going there. I'll find out. Then it goes to the diode. Then it goes to wherever the bias supply is. Anyway, this resistor burned horribly. I'm gonna have to take this out and excavate it to know exactly what's going on there, and do a lot of cleanup. And hopefully the board itself is fine. If not, there's enough real estate I can put in a terminal strip to do what that little board used to be doing. So let me do some excavations with the camera moved, and then report back with more solid information. Okay, I've made sense of this. So this is the resistor coming from the bias tap on the, it's actually coming from the bias tap on the power transformer. It's right here from one side of the HT. So the HT supply is how they're deriving their bias here. So that's a large value resistor. After that, it goes through this resistor, this diode rather, which rectifies it, turns into the DC that we need for bias. This is doing an awful lot of the dropping by itself. And from this point, it goes to here, to the negative of this cap, 500 volt cap, which is way over the top as far as what a bias supply needs. It did not fail because of voltage. It failed because this resistor burned itself all to hell. Now, the question I have is, besides the fact that I don't know what value resistor this was, I'll have to figure out a new way to do this, because this is not a good way. That's an unusual place to have a failure in a bias supply. And it kills me for the builder of this, because he went to great lengths to try to do everything very, very well. His wiring is very neat. I would say about as good as you're going to get out there. I'm not a huge fan of the bus wire, but once the amp is no longer catching on fire, it may sound immaculate. I don't see anything in here that I would fault, other than some of the caps in here. The little silver micas are generic ones that just say SM, and that's not that the builder did something wrong, is that the builder does not know necessarily that those have an unusually high failure rate in the wild. So this half power switch I need to replace. Feels like a standard double pole double throw, and it's probably, sorry about that, probably nothing more. I was going to say it's probably nothing more than a triode pentode mode, but I could be wrong about that. It's got some resistors hanging off of it. Let me show you. So it is indeed a double pole double throw switch, but they've got these resistors. I'll sort out what's happening there. First order of business is removing this board, removing at least that one damaged resistor, and seeing how much damage has been done to the board itself, whether we have irreparable carbon damage, whether I can scrape away the toasted stuff that likes to conduct and we can reuse that. I will find out soon. As far as figuring out what resistor, that value that resistor needs to be, that's just basic math. That's easily done. As long as I do this without the power tubes in the amp, it'd be very easy to find a suitable voltage with a pot and then replace that pot. And between you and me, I can probably look at a Dumble schematic until I find the one closest to what this is. So I don't think too much of the wheel needs to be reinvented here. But damn, it stinks. All right, believe it or not, that's a lot better. You can see the burnt area of the board there between this eyelet and this eyelet. That's where that conductive path developed. We're just going to run a new resistor from here to here and a diode from here to here, rather than having this bridge to here with a resistor, then a diode, then a bridge. It'll be functionally equivalent. It means that we won't have to worry about a path from this eyelet to this eyelet. But before I can get started on that, besides the fact I need to have some parts arrive, I want to seal this up so that it can't absorb moisture. Okay, now to let this first coat dry, build up a second coat, and then at a quick glance, once everything's put back in place, a lot of people wouldn't even spot that there was a problem there. And it's not just covering it up. That actually does seal the board, because fiberglass boards can absorb moisture. The fibers have an open area, and electronically, that damaged part of the board will not be in service in the future. So it will be good.